let's start with some coaching news because there's a man who we have referenced as Hot Cedarfields. You know what is one of the best ways to cool down the pants? It's to change them. So Scott Satterfield, introduced as the next head coach at Cincinnati. He takes over a program that Luke Fickell has leveled up into one of the best in the American Conference, and it is a program that is making the move to the Big 12 Conference beginning next year. That is now a Power 5 job. Before we get to the Louisville side of this, Danny, what's the obviously C+, and Tom, obviously I have no idea how it will work out. But if you were Scott Satterfield, do you like this move? Do you think that this is a good opportunity for him to restart the clock?
I mean, I'm assuming he's getting a raise, right? You're not going to take a lesser pay.
It might be competitive. I don't know about the details, but
I think the most important thing you said is like the resetting of the clock, the perception of you, as opposed to getting fired. And then you're kind of, oh, this guy got fired. If you leave of your own accord, I think that's a better move all the time. Yes, you would like to be able to stay and turn that narrative around yourself. But if you can change it and leave when you can, I mean, let's be honest. This relationship has been dicey ever since he flirted 2 years ago with another. And he was a little too honest with everybody by putting that out there. But it just seems like the relationship has been fractured since then. Yeah, if you can parlay this season where, if it was 8-4, I think we're having a totally different conversation, but it did come up short of that in that loss to Kentucky. If you can parlay it, but here's the thing. I don't think Cincinnati's a better job, but I think it's the smart move for him to make. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, no, it's strange. It's unexpected, but at the same time, it's not surprising because, like you were saying, he's interviewed for other jobs. It has felt like for the last couple of years that if another opportunity arose that Scott Satterfield found desirable, he was probably going to jump at it unless things changed and went really well at Louisville. Because I don't know what it is, but clearly he was never super happy with the being there after he took the job. So I think with Cincinnati moving to a Power 5, that obviously helps make it more likely to happen because you're not going from a P5 job to a G5 job anymore. You're going to be joining the Big 12. You're joining a team that has shown it can get to the college football playoff. Now, there's an uncertain future about it in the Big 12 because you don't know what it's going to be like in that entirely new landscape. But it's good for Satterfield. I don't know if it's the most logical hire on Cincinnati's part. Like, again, it's a good hire. I have no idea if it'll work out. But when we were talking about candidates for this job after Fickell left for Wisconsin, I thought there were a lot of really good names that made a whole lot of sense. And nothing against FAU, but for Tom Herman to end up at FAU when Cincinnati was available, that tells me Cincinnati wasn't all that interested in Herman. And just my own personal preference, I would rather have Tom Herman than Scott Satterfield, who I like, but it's not as if he was lighting the world on fire at Louisville. This is a program where, if you survey the Louisville fans right now, I don't think they're going to be that upset by this. A, because they didn't really seem to like him that much, and B, because of who they likely have their eyes on to replace him, who they've wanted for a long time. So I don't know. It was an unexpected thing to wake up to this morning. It cost me to adjust my bowl rankings because let's not forget the Fenway Bowl is between Cincinnati and Louisville, and I don't want to spoil things, but the Fenway Bowl took a little sleep in the rankings this morning.
Who would you rather have, Brian Hartline or Scott Satterfield?
Brian Hartline. If I'm Cincinnati.
I would agree. I'm with Tom. There is an inexperience factor. You don't know, but I think the upside could potentially be higher. Would you rather have Dion or Scott Satterfield?
I don't know. We'll get to Dion in a second. I want to get thoughts on the first 24 hours. I'm just looking at some of the names
that we talked about, which is kind of to Tom's point. Like, if you're a Cincinnati fan, you thought you were in the market for some of these coaches, which I think at the opening press conference would have infused a lot more life and energy into a fan base where, I'm sure there's some Cincinnati fans are probably Googling real quick, who Scott Satterfield, where's he been? What's his record been? Okay, let's look at his story. Like, and I think it might be, again, C+, so like might be work out, it might not. It might be a great fit, but I just feel like the reaction, it's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle for him to win over some of those fans. And by the way, Luke Fickell set an incredibly high bar, and now you have a different bar that you're trying to get to, but the expectation is you better get 10, 11 wins every year. That's what Luke Fickell brought you, and it's going to be a lot tougher to do that in the new landscape.
Yeah, like Sat's getting off the hot seat in Louisville, but now he's the guy following the guy. And that's never a fun situation to be in unless you have success right away. But the good news is, depending on where he lives since taking the Louisville job, he might not have to move. It's not a very long drive between cities, between Louisville and Cincinnati.
He's always had that home in North Carolina. Remember, it's like,
oh, true.
I got family back there, so always got to keep it open. The move itself reminded me a little bit of Dana Holgerson, who was not fired by West Virginia, but left to go take the Houston job. And I don't have as clear a view of comparing the West Virginia and the Houston job, but it was literally like your contract was not going to get extended anymore at West Virginia, and you go sign a new contract. And at Louisville, I don't know, Scott Satterfield had a pretty good recruiting class, which I imagine is not going to, hold together quite as well. And unless, depending on how quickly they can move to replace him, he had probably the sand was starting to run out of the hourglass. And now he legitimately starts with an entirely full, brand new contract, brand new set of expectations. He moves ahead, stays ahead of the firing squad. From Scott Satterfield's perspective in his own career, I understand the move. I think Louisville's a better job. I think Louisville is a better job because that you've got more resources. I think that when you look at that community, they treat both the football and the basketball programs like the professional, the professional franchises of the city of Louisville. I think that their NIL operations probably well stocked, and seems as though Cincinnati is going to have to really ramp that up to be able to compete in the Big 12. So you are, in my opinion, taking maybe a lateral to half step down going from Louisville to Cincinnati. But what you are doing is you're buying yourself more years of being at the Power 5 level, which is more money and at least a fresh opportunity to be able to restart and see if you can have some success there with the Bearcats program that's in a much better place than it was when Fickell took over, for sure.